understand, a language that didn't care if I was whole or wounded. And that's how I realized you don't need to wait for life to be perfect to create beauty from it. Your new life doesn't have to look like your old one. It doesn't have to impress anyone. It just has to feel true to you. Maybe it's a quieter life. Maybe it's a slower one. Maybe it's a completely unexpected path. That's okay. Let it be different. Let it surprise you. Let it soften you. Rebuilding doesn't mean recreating what you lost. It means discovering what was hidden within you all along. And if people question your path, let them. They don't have to understand your journey. They don't need to approve of your pace. What matters is that you are choosing to live, to try, to keep showing up. That alone is extraordinary. When you rebuild your life, you don't erase your past. You honor it. You carry it with you like a lantern in the dark, lighting the way forward. Not because you're fearless, but because you're brave enough to keep walking with your fear. That's what rebuilding is. It's finding light in the wreckage. It's growing flowers in the soil of what once broke you. It's realizing that even though you've been through the fire, you can still rise. Not in spite of your pain, but because of it. There comes a moment, often quietly and without ceremony, when you realize that everything you've been through has shaped you into someone you never expected to become. You look at your reflection, not searching for the person you used to be, but embracing the one you've grown into. There's no more pretending, no more hiding behind excuses or expectations, just you. Just the raw, unfiltered truth of your journey. And in that truth, you find your power. You're no longer waiting for the world to hand you your worth. You're no longer waiting for the old version of yourself to return. You're no longer begging life to rewind. You've stopped wishing for what was and started working with what is. And that's when everything starts to change. Not because the world becomes easier, but because you become stronger. We often wait for some perfect time to begin. We say, when I feel better, I'll start living again. When I heal completely, I'll chase my dreams again. When I'm no longer afraid, I'll take the lead. But life doesn't. Life sickens, and childhood leaps disappear before you had even started. Right. And the healing isn't a destination. It's a process. It's a series of tiny, defiant acts of courage in the face of fear and uncertainty. It's waking up each day and choosing to keep going even when it would be easier to give up. I remember the first time I sat in front of a crowd to speak. My hands trembled. My voice cracked. I felt exposed. Not because I was in a wheelchair or because of my soul, with strangers. I wasn't there as someone who had it all figured out. I was there as someone still learning how to live with grace in the face of loss. Still learning how to rise with dignity, even when everything inside me felt like collapsing. And something incredible happened. The more I spoke from that place of truth, the more others saw themselves in me, not because we had the same story, but because we all know what it feels like to hurt. We all know what it's like to lose, to fall, to doubt ourselves. Pain is universal, and so is the human ability to rise from it. That's when I understood the real meaning of strength. It's not about appearing flawless or untouched by life. It's about being open, being real, saying, yes, I've suffered, but look, I'm still here. It's about offering your story, not as a symbol of perfection, but as a source of connection. When you stop hiding your scars, you give other people permission to heal. You remind them that they are not alone. And in doing so, you heal. A little more yourself. There is something beautiful about choosing to shine, even when the world tried to dim your light. about choosing to be kind even when life has been unkind to you, about choosing to give even when you feel empty. These are the quiet victories no one sees, but they matter. They count. They are the true markers of a rebuilt life. Rebuilding your life doesn't mean you'll never feel pain again. It doesn't mean you'll never have hard days. It means you've created a foundation strong enough to hold you when those storms come. It means you've stopped living in reaction to your past and started living in alignment with your purpose. And your purpose doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes your purpose is simply to live with integrity, to speak with love, to show up authentically, to inspire even one person to believe in themselves again. And if you've done that, even once, you've already changed the world in a small but powerful way. One of the greatest lessons I've learned is that our lives are not defined by the things we've lost, but by how we choose to respond to that loss. You can carry your pain like a prison, or you can carry it like a torch. The choice is yours. But know this, you are not weak for having moments of doubt. You are not less because of the hardships you've faced. You are not broken beyond repair. You are simply in the process of becoming. And becoming takes time. It's not rushed, it's not forced, it's patient, it's slow. But it's sacred. Every step you take, every tear you cry, every time you fall and rise again, it all matters, it all counts. There is nothing insignificant about your journey. Every breath you take in defiance of the pain that tried to silence you is a declaration that you are still in the fight, still choosing life, still writing your story. Sometimes we wait for others to validate. Change everything. You don't think about how fragile life really is until it shatters right in front of you. I was that person once, full of life, full of ambition. I had my dreams mapped out. I knew who I wanted to be, or at least I thought I did. But life has its own way of showing us who we really are. It doesn't always come gently. Sometimes it takes everything from you so you can finally see what truly matters. I remember that day clearly. One moment I was laughing. The next I was flying through the air, out of control, lying in that hospital not knowing that in seconds, surrounded everything I knew about myself, unfamiliar faces and whispers I wasn't ready to hear. Your life flashes before your eyes. I felt like I had lost everything. For me, it was my identity, my strength, my freedom. Just a long, haunting silence before the impact. And in that moment of darkness, and then darkness, I asked the question we all ask when life gets too chaos. When I woke up, I didn't know the full extent of what had happened. What did I do to deserve this? I didn't know how broken my body was and who I was possibly be worth this. I didn't know that my was not measured surviving when you didn't life again. That look doesn't always that I want to live with even when every brown feels like more than the physical surgeries. People often think strength and limitation are full. I never imagined facing you have to decide what kind of person didn't know I used to be. Was that something? But I've learned that real she was gone for good. Is allowing yourself to be buried under the weight of this yesterday. Angry at the world for moving on, and I didn't know still choosing to get angry at who I was going to be. Still choosing to live. Angry at the people who still choosing to hope. In those days and nights in the hospital, surrounded by beeping machines and the smell of slowly I began to realize something. I stopped asking why me. Pain has a way of stripping away the noise. And started asking, what now? It forces you to face the raw, honest truth of who you are. I couldn't reverse time or undo the fall. And in that truth, I found something unexpected. But I could choose how I responded to it. I found strength. That was the only power I had left. Not the kind that comes from muscles or movement, but the only power I ever really needed. I began to look at myself not as broken, but as rebuilding. I was not a victim, I was a survivor. And there's a world of difference between the two. Victims wait to be saved. Survivors save themselves. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. Redefining who I was in a world that constantly tried to remind me of what I had lost. But I kept going, slowly, painfully. One breath, one thought, one stubborn step at a time. And You know what I discovered? When life takes everything from you, it also gives you a gift. The gift of clarity. You stop chasing things that don't matter. You stop pretending. You start living from a place of truth. Because you've seen how short life can be, how fragile. And in that truth, there is beauty. In that pain, there is purpose. I realized that I didn't need to be who I was before the accident. I could become someone entirely new, someone softer, wiser, more resilient, someone who knew the taste of rock bottom, but still chose to rise. I didn't have to walk to move forward. I didn't have to stand tall to stand strong. After the shock fades and the tears dry up, I just had to believe when you're left that my life still had meaning. Question, even if it looked different now. And if I could do that, the question is heavy. It presses down on my chest like a weight. My wheelchair you didn't ask for. My pain. You look at the pieces of your life scattered around you, and it feels impossible to put them back together. Nothing fits the way it used to. The colors are different. The lines are blurred. And you realize the life you once imagined no longer exists. But somewhere between what was and what will be, you are given something that no one can take away from you. The power of choice. Not the kind of choice that changes your past, but the kind that reshapes your future. When I lost the ability to walk, I also lost the comfort of routine. The world I knew vanished overnight. The dreams I had worked so hard for seemed to disappear into thin air. But I was still here, breathing, broken but alive. And that meant something. That had to mean something. At first I waited. I waited for someone to save me. I waited for the pain to go away, for my own life to come back, for someone to tell me what to do. But no one came with answers. No one handed me a blueprint for how to live with a shattered spine or a shattered heart. People offered sympathy. They offered prayers. But they couldn't live my life for me. They couldn't rebuild it. That was my job. And that realization hit hard. Because it meant I could no longer hide behind my pain. I had to do something with it. That's when I understood. Excuses are called kind. Would I still be called strong? Places to land when you're afraid to rise. So why was I speaking to myself that way? Afraid of failing. I made a decision. Afraid of being seen as being my own enemy. Afraid of if I was going to rebuild, I needed to become my own ally. That meant replacing shame with compassion, replacing anger with understanding. It's not a wall, excuses with action. It's a signal. It didn't happen overnight. A reminder that something inside you still wants to fight. There were days I cried for hours. Still wants to live. But through it all, and when you feel that spark, choosing to keep going, you have to listen. Choosing to believe taught me how to start over. My life was not over. Life was forcing me to learn, taking a different path. So I started small. Look at those of us who've gone through visible trauma and say, "You're so strong." I began to notice the way I spoke to myself isn't what you think it is. It was cruel. It's not loud. You're useless now. It's not always visible. You used to be. Sometimes strength is just waking up when you don't want to. But then I asked brushing myself, your hair even when you're not leaving the house. If I spoke those words to a friend, it's smiling at your reflection when you barely recognize yourself. It's saying, "I'll try again tomorrow," when today broke you. And when you stop making excuses for why your life can't change, you open the door to the possibility that it can. I used to think I needed to be who I was before the accident to have value. That if I couldn't walk, I couldn't contribute. That if I couldn't dance, I couldn't inspire. But life showed me otherwise. I found new ways to express myself. I found my voice. And with that voice, I realized I could still touch hearts. I could still spark hope. Not in spite of my story, but because of it. It's strange, isn't it? The very thing I once believed had ruined me became the thing that revealed me. That's the power of choice. You can look at your pain as punishment, or you can look at it as preparation for a life with more depth, more empathy, more courage. You get to decide. And yes, people will doubt you. They will project their own fears onto you. They will say, I don't know how you do it. Or, I could never handle what you've been. True. But that's not your burden to carry. You're not here to meet other people's expectations. You're here to live truthfully. To choose purpose over pity. To stand, even if it's only in spirit. The moment you realize that you still have something to offer, despite what you've lost, is the moment your healing truly begins. Healing isn't about erasing the pain. It's about holding space for it and still daring to dream. Still daring to try. Still daring to believe that something beautiful can come from the mess. And I want you to know something very important. Your past is a chapter, not the whole story. You are allowed to outgrow your pain. You are allowed to stop explaining your wounds even if the people who never bothered to understand them. So when the world gives you every reason to quit, remember that you only need one reason to stay. And that reason can be as simple as this. Because you're not done yet. You're still breathing. You're still here. And as long as you are here, you have the power to choose. You have the power to rebuild not the life you lost, but the life that's still waiting for you to claim it. And you've been broken, truly, deeply broken. Something changes in you. Not just in your body or your routine, but in your spirit. You become more aware of what matters. You learn that strength isn't loud and that healing isn't linear. You stop looking for miracles outside of yourself and begin searching within. That's where the real rebuilding begins. Not in the world around you, but in your own heart. I used to believe that rebuilding meant going back to the way things were. I thought if I worked hard enough, stayed strong enough, maybe I could somehow return to the life I had before. But slowly I began to understand that sometimes the goal isn't to go back. Sometimes the goal is to start anew. Silence the wisdom of what broke you, and the courage to create something my real even voice more for the first time. It took me a long time to understand. People think when you lose something major, the version of myself before the fall, your mobility was not better, your job just different, your home, that you have nothing left. Yes, but I want to tell you this. But she also had fears she never confronted. There is always something left. She had plans. It might be small, but many of them, it might be quiet, weren't rooted in who she really was. A whisper inside your soul that says, try again. Through the stillness. If you choose to listen to that whisper, if you choose to nurture it, that's how you begin to rebuild. Not in defiance of what you've lost, but in reverence of what still remains. In the early days of my recovery, when the world felt cold and the mirror didn't recognize me, I clung to one truth. I still had my voice. I could still speak. I could still think. I could still feel. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start with. I didn't know where it would lead. But I knew I couldn't let that light inside me go out. Not yet. Not when it had already survived so much. So I started sharing. Not because I had all the answers, but because I had the questions. I had the tears, the sleepless nights, the moments of absolute despair. And I knew someone else out there was feeling the same. Maybe they weren't in a wheelchair, but maybe they felt stuck in their own way, in their minds, in their relationships, in their pain. And if my story could give them even 1 ounce of hope, then it mattered. That's what rebuilding really is. It's not flashy. It's not perfect. It's not a straight line. It's one honest moment after another. It's choosing to speak kindly to yourself, choosing to be patient with your own process, choosing to sit with your discomfort and not run from it. It's learning how to carry your pain with grace rather than resentment. People will tell you to be positive. They'll tell you to move on. But healing doesn't work on command. It's not about putting a smile on your face and pretending everything's fine. It's about honoring your journey, every messy, uncertain step of it. It's about showing up for yourself, even on the days when you feel like disappearing. It's about looking at your scars, not with shame, but with respect, because those scars are proof that you survived what should have destroyed you. And yes, there are going to be days when it all feels like too much. Days when your mind is louder than your hope. Days when the world outside feels too fast and you feel too slow. On those days, I remind myself of this. I am not broken. I am rebuilding. And rebuilding takes time. It takes grace. It takes gentleness. You don't need to rush your healing to impress anyone. You just need to keep moving, even if some days all you can do is breathe. There is so much pressure in this world to have it all figured out, to be perfect, to always be progressing. But some of the most powerful progress is invisible. It's the decision to forgive yourself. It's the moment you ask for help. It's the courage to say, I'm struggling, without apology.